Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? So, thank you for joining us today. We've got with us Amanda Shirley. She is DJ's sister, and she's been an integral part of getting DJ's case put to the forefront and getting everything handled. And you guys have heard her on the podcast. We've talked to her a couple different times, and you should have seen the news stuff that came out with her this week, and just getting everything out there. And I wanted to bring Amanda on to kind of talk about the family and where they're at, and what the next stages are, and what information they're getting from the police department, and everything that led up to the arrest of Marshall. So that's a big thing for me, is that I want to give Amanda her dues, because she's the one that's been pushing so hard and doing everything. And as I've told everybody, I'm just a storyteller. I can only tell the story. She's the one been out there and fighting and doing everything for DJ. So, Amanda, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. And anybody wants to ask questions, throw
I
up
think we
some
got a little
questions in the
delay.
comments. Yeah, there is. You can't. You'll have to not watch the YouTube screen, because it gets real confusing, because it's a few minutes behind, or a
Right.
few seconds.
But yeah, I'm doing good. My family is doing much better. I've been telling everybody it just feels like the air has been much thinner lately, ever since his arrest.
Absolutely. I know what's it like now, not to have to wake up every morning and look at your phone for an email hoping that something happened.
I haven't got out of the habit of doing it. I'm still doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's been
I
seven
think
years
it's
of
more
it.
now that I'm waiting. Yeah, 7 years every day. Grabbing that phone up, checking it. And I don't. I think it'll take me a while to get out of the habit of it. I do. I did. The night the night he was arrested, I did actually sleep a total of 8 hours that night without any kind of melatonin or sleeping pills or anything. So that was a plus.
That's
That's the
awesome.
first time I've done that in a while.
I can imagine. I know that it's something that's been weighing on you for a long time. So it kind of talk everybody through, because all the stuff that was going on in the background that we weren't talking about on the podcast, that you were dealing with, and everything that's been going on up until the point he was arrested. Kind of go through everybody with that, and kind of let everybody know how that happened, and where it got to where it was.
Well, I'll start. Go ahead and start with the arrest that happened last week. Um, he is in Walker County Jail, sitting there waiting for his arraignment on the 26th. But up until that moment, he was arrested, which he was arrested by Murray County officers the night before, late into the night. We knew about we knew about his indictment for 7 weeks. He was indicted back in April the 24th is when he was indicted. The Walker County Sheriff has actually been sitting there this whole time with this warrant for murder, and every day I was checking to see if was he arrested? Was he arrested? Is he in jail? Is he in custody? Every day, and nothing. So I had Marshall's address. I've had his address for 7 years. Ever since this happened, I knew he stayed with his family when he wasn't at the location where the shooting occurred. He's been living with his family. So I knew this address for 7 years, and then there was also a new address that we had got a hold of. So the new address was Whitfield County. So Tuesday afternoon, I gave Whitfield County a call and talked to the supervisor over the investigation unit. And gave him a recap of DJ's story and what happened and everything. And I told him how the sheriff has never spoke to us. He just has blew us off. He's ignored us, everything else. And I just told him that I felt like the sheriff just didn't want to have to make this arrest. And he told me that they had not been in contact with Walker County whatsoever. And he told me that the address that I gave him was there in Whitfield County, but the other address that I'd had for the last 7 years was actually in Murray County. And he said that he was going to call the DA and get verification of the warrant and that he would see what he could do. Well, the very next morning, I got an email at 7 o'clock that morning that said from him that said that Mr. Payne had been taken into custody overnight in Murray County. And so I sent him an email back and thanked him for his help and everything. And I asked him, I said, well, was this because you just helped me out, or did Walker County get in contact with you? And he said that they were still never in any contact with Walker County Sheriff's Department. That after he got off the phone with me, he started researching Mr. Payne, and he handed everything over to the Murray County. That's because that's where he was at with Murray County. He handed everything over to them, and they went out and made the arrest. Within 8 hours from me calling this man, Marshall was in custody after we'd been sitting and waiting for 7 weeks.
That blows my mind. I mean, it just shows that Walker County is just kind of blown everything off and kind of taken themselves out of the picture. And I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, the only thing that I can think of course, it's still it's still an open case because it hadn't went to court yet.
Yep.
So of course he's going to say that he can't speak to media or anything like that, which that's true. He can't talk to any media or anything. But there was no reason in not making this arrest. You have a man that was wanted for 2 counts of murder. You could have at least let the county that he's in know, hey, you've got a murderer in your county. You need to take him into custody.
Yeah, because
No,
they would
he
have
didn't even give
they would have done the same thing for him that they did for you.
Mm-hmm. But it was back in 2020 when GBI changed the manner of death. Sheriff Wilson actually jumped on in front of a news crew and made a comment that's when they asked him if they were going to reopen the case. And his exact words were, changing the manner of death is not a reason to reopen the case. If anything, it convolutes the case, and that he was still leaning towards the fact that DJ killed himself. He said that on the news. So my only thing is, I guess he just didn't want to make it reality. Like if he made the arrest, it would have made it real.
Right.
Everything he said, all the times that, he's ignored us and blew us off and everything else, and then made that comment on TV, it made it all real, and it just made an ass out of itself.
Yep.
That's what it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the whole thing. I just can't believe that they would just completely ignore everything up until that point that, you as a victim has to get involved, or, that's unreal.
And I get it. I know pretty much every family member of a suicide victim they're not going to want to believe their loved one killed themselves. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, oh, he didn't do it, blah, 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 blah. I get that. I understand that. I know probably every person that commits suicide has that family that don't want to admit that. But this is the sheriff of this county. He's been sheriff for 23 or 24 years. He could have at least had the decency to sit down and say, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry y'all are having to go through this. I mean, acknowledge us. At some point, acknowledge my family.
Yeah, and that I mean, they have to be able to do that as a sheriff. I mean,
he's not. He just, I don't know.
Now, is Ellenberg still on the police? Is he still there with Walker County?
I believe he's working for the drug task force now. The last time I checked, that's where he was at, and that was several years ago.
So, but he will still be involved, I imagine, with the trial, I would hope, yes, or with the prosecution. Yes. Because I mean, as you go through, yes, and listen to everything that we've been listening to, you see that he realized very quickly that it wasn't right, and there was things wrong with it. And I think he was pushing for an arrest.
I do too. And the thing about it is, in the state of Georgia, a coroner has authority over everyone. When a coroner comes on a scene, if there's a body, suspicious death, suicide, a crime scene, whatever, that coroner has the authority over everyone on that scene. He can arrest the police there. He can arrest the detectives. He can arrest the sheriff if he needed to. If they get in the way of his investigation or his body or anything else, he has authority over everyone. So you have a coroner that showed up to DJ's crime scene that had been coroner for over 20 years. Now, in the state of Georgia, also, you have to have no medical experience to be coroner. You just have to have a high school diploma.
Yeah.
So you have this coroner that showed up and said, he's 20, 25 years in office. He says, okay, yeah, it's a suicide. You have a detective still in training, real young guy. Ellenberg's a real young guy. He's still in training. You automatically going to say, okay, well, this man knows what he's talking about. He's been here for, in this position for 20-something years. So, of course, Ellenberg's going to have to take his word for it. He can't very well stand up and argue about it because the coroner has authority over him. But even though they ran with suicide, you could still see that Ellenberg was trying to do his job. He was trying to get some answers. He was questioning people, even though it didn't get handled the correct way the day of because the coroner was on the scene. I believe that Ellenberg was still trying. He knew that it wasn't what it was, what they were calling it. He knew that that wasn't what it was.
Yeah, because he could have stopped. He could have stopped the day. I mean, the moment he left out of there and never looked at anything again because of the way it was. He didn't have to talk to anybody. Didn't have to go any further, but he chose to. So
right. So I'm grateful of that because, he didn't push hard, but he did still push a little. If it had been me, I think I'd have pushed more. But
when you got a jackass like Wilson above him, though, that's probably no telling what he's saying. Yeah.
And not only the sheriff, but the former DA, Buzz Franklin, that was over it too. Over the Lookout Mountain Judicial Circuit. He probably didn't have much room to push too much.
Yeah, I mean, that was because with the evidence that he sent over, reading through the police report, he presented everything. He put it in that should have been easily taken to the grand jury, but the DA at the time just said, no, there's not enough evidence.
I know. And, to be honest, I don't believe for 1 second that DA even looked at the presentation that Ellenberg sent to him.
No, he looked at the cause of death.
Yeah, the statement that he made, the statement that he wrote out to the detectives to tell us, when they call us in to tell us whatever, it was the stupidest thing ever. I forgot exactly word for word what it said, but it said that when viewing some witnesses' statements, it would look like a homicide, but while viewing the other witness, singular, statement, we conclude that this is a suicide. So basically, he was saying that looking at two witnesses' statements, yeah, it looks like a homicide. But looking at the one witness statement, Marshall's statement, it was a suicide. So he admitted on paper in that statement to detectives that he was going with the murderer's statement.
That just blows my mind. I mean, there was a lot of issues with him. I know Eric was wrapped up in a case with him as well. Yes. That was pretty highly publicized. So.
Yeah, he actually Eric covered the Tanya Craft case.
Yep.
Out of that same judicial circuit.
Yep, that was a mess.
It was awful.
So what's the next stages and what's the next steps now for you as the family and for the court side of it?
Well, as far as the court side of it, we have, like I said, the arraignment is going to be Monday, June the 26th. After arraignment, he'll come up for a bond hearing. So that'll be the next big thing, the next thing that we have to worry about and lose sleep over. And then, of course, trial. I haven't sat down and talked to the DA since he's been arrested. The DA's actually been out of town on some military assignments, so I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with him. But as soon as he gets back in office and everything, I'm sure he'll have us come in and talk to us.
Yep, I'm sure. And I mean, that's the problem now is that, it can be 6 months to a year before it ever gets to that next stage of anything. I don't know. I mean, with the charges, they're pretty pretty severe charges. I don't know that. I guess this bond will probably be pretty high, I would imagine.
You always hear that they can't set you a bond for murder, but actually, I believe in the state of Georgia, it's a law that they have to set you a bond. But with it being a case like this where it's a murder, they can set it so high that you'd never be able to make that bond.
Right. Yep. Just make it unattainable to where, where he's
Right.
not able to do it. I mean, and I guess the next stages are with everything. I just don't know what his mindset is. As if, I know they charged him really. I mean, with what they charged him with is, either a life sentence with, there's only 3 options: with parole, without parole, and death. So,
Death.
and with parole, I think it's 30 years he has to serve before he's eligible for parole on that. So
That's what me and my husband were talking about the other day. I was thinking that even with possibility of parole, that they still had to do a certain percentage of time. And
yeah,
I was
there's a
thinking it was either
mandatory.
30 or 35 years.
Yeah, it's mandatory 30 years for that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be, it'll be interesting. I don't know that it'll get to the point. I mean, I don't know if they'll plead him down. I'm sure that they're going to talk to you guys about that. I don't know.
I'm sure. I'm sure they probably will. If they don't, then they're great.
Right.
Awesome. I hope they don't, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yep. Yep. I mean, and that's going to be the hard decisions for you guys, to have to do. I mean, everybody that's listened to the podcast and everybody that's heard it throughout the years know that he's guilty. Well, some people, I do have people still arguing with me on Facebook and things like that, saying that there's not enough evidence or whatever that I'm like, I don't know what you're listening to, but I don't know what you're listening to and
Right.
looking at and seeing, but there's so much that's there. So
The only people I've had since his arrest, I've seen a couple of negative comments, and I click on their profile to see who it is or if we have mutual friends. And it's a funny coincidence that every single person that has a negative comment to say are from Whitfield County or Murray County, in the same spot where him and his family are from.
yep.
So I've not interacted with any of the comments. I'm not going to comment back to them. They're not going to get to me. I'm not going to let them touch me. They're not going to bother me. I've been fighting for 7 years for this, and nobody can take it away from me.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this is what you've dedicated yourself to for the last 7 years to make sure that he did have justice. And you've gotten to the point now that he's arrested, and now you're just looking at making sure that he gets what he deserves for what happened.
Yeah, and everybody keeps asking me, well, what new evidence was presented that changed their mind, or what new evidence was there that made them reopen the case? There was no new evidence. None. Zero. It just took somebody new in office to actually look at the case, to look at every piece of information, to look at every interview, read every statement. That's all it took, was somebody to actually care enough to look at it.
That's the whole thing, is that everything that I'm showing, everything that I'm playing on the podcast is 6 years old, 6.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing new. All of this was available at the time, and they just didn't, I guess, just they threw their hands. They didn't care. They threw their hands up and thought you would go away, is what they did.
Exactly. I told my mom right after it happened, because right after it happened and they closed the case out, when they said that they wasn't going to be charging anybody, the sheriff actually told the media not to discuss this case. Well, when we found that out, I told my mom, I said, I'll make DJ famous.
Yep.
I'll make him famous.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, the only reason why for the media not to discuss it is because he knows that it was not a good investigation and everything wasn't done properly. So
yeah, because I mean, wouldn't you want to come to you? Wouldn't you, if you were sheriff, wouldn't you want to find out the truth? Wouldn't you want to bring justice to a family, or even to get a possible murderer off the street? Why wouldn't you share that information?
wouldn't you want to shut down a drug house? I mean, I mean, that's the
Exactly.
thing. I mean, and after that, after that, there's probably been 20 or 30 arrests after that. at that house.
Yes,
I guess
easily.
I guess he's passed away now, so um, it's not there anymore. I guess that was their solution, is to make it go away.
Well, actually, the old man is still alive. I think he's just moved. It's kind of a routine with him. He'll go somewhere and live for
Okay.
10 years, and then when the heat gets on them so much, they just pack up and leave to the next county. But he's done this as long as DJ knew him. I knew of him moving twice. He used to live in Ringo, Georgia. Then they moved down here to Flintstone, Georgia, and now they've up and moved again. So I'm not sure where he's at. But yeah, the trailer. Everybody, I have all these people that live around there that always keep me in touch with what's going on and keep me updated. They actually said that it's nice to drive by there and see the trailer just collecting dust and everything. Nobody's living there, so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm
I
happy
mean,
for all those
that's
people. I'm sure those
yeah.
people are fed up with all that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they didn't want people, and they probably didn't even realize it. I mean, I'm sure they did after the third or fourth time the police showed up out there. So
Right.
well, good. So, I mean, your mom's doing well. She messaged me on Facebook and said, "Finally," I think that's basically what she sent me the night that Marshall got arrested. So she, I know she's relieved and
So yeah, then you've got to overlook my mom sometimes. She doesn't do the texting thing very well or anything. She doesn't know how to use things online, so
no,
just bear with her.
that was perfect. I didn't expect anything else from her other than that. That was awesome. She just, I could tell that meant a lot to her. So,
Oh yeah.
and the kids are good.
We do have the kids are great. It was
Good.
I just started bawling the day that he was arrested. Mom told the kids, and Jack's the oldest. The little boy's the oldest. He wanted to come down to Mimi's house. They call me Mimi. I don't know where it came
Hmm.
from, but it just stuck. They come down here. He came down here and he ran in the bedroom and he just grabbed me and hugged me. And
That's
that broke
awesome.
my heart. That was awesome. He was so relieved that his daddy's killer had been locked up. And it made it
That's
all
that's
worth it.
that's the thing about it is that it's no matter what you did without him going to jail and being, basically taking ownership of what happened, you weren't ever going to be able to convince the kids without that. Now that
Right.
they know that everything you're fighting for, they know that everything is the way that it should be.
And and that's what I've said from the beginning. If even if nothing came out of this, if nothing ever happened, there was no arrest made, at least those kids would be able to, when they get older, they grew up and they Googled their daddy's name, they could see it for themselves. They could see the truth. They could see how much I fought to try to get their daddy killer in jail. And they can make their own conclusion, which truth is truth, facts are facts. So, but I started this for DJ and the kids. That's why I
Yep.
started this. And I finished. I took
Yes.
on an entire state and I won.
It's amazing, and that's the most important thing. And you should be able to take a step back now, take a deep breath, and just start enjoying life and start grieving. You can get to
Yes.
that grieving process of, okay, now we I knew what happened, but now everybody knows what's happened, and it's just not some crazy
Right.
lady out yelling about it. um
Right.
that's the hardest part is, it's like you said, everybody has that first thought process of, okay, it was a suicide. They wouldn't have done that. So everybody thinks
Mhm.
that, and every family member, I would think anyway. And
Right.
but you've been so loud and vocal about it, and now everything is just, I don't want to say justified, but it's it, it it's the to the point you're able to say, see, I told you.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
Because for a grand jury to indict someone on 2 murder counts, there's some heavy hard proof there, evidence there for them to have seen, for them to agree to that. Because otherwise, it's either going to get thrown out, no indictment, something. But that, to me, that is a jury. I think a grand jury is 16 people.
Hmm.
That is 16 people saying, yeah, he did this. So it coming from a court on paper, that helps me a lot.
Absolutely. And the fact that they charged him with two different counts, the felony and the malice murder, that's huge as well, because
Yeah,
there's unfortunately it's been 7 years, so some of the other charges that they could have gotten him with
we're gone.
are gone because it just out of time. So
Yeah,
now that they're able to do that, it's going to be key to make sure that one of those two are going to stick one way or the
right.
other. One of the two will. I think felony has to be proven that there was a commission of a felony, but I mean so if he's a convicted felon, right,
Yes,
and he had a firearm, I mean that's a felony.
right. Well,
So
and not only that, but it was a sawed-off shotgun, which is a
yep,
federal offense.
yep.
So that's still a commission of a crime right there, just having a sawed-off shotgun.
Yep, and it was his gun. I mean, that's the thing, is
Yep,
that he tried so hard to push that it was
he
DJ's
did.
gun, that he was so hard that he got it from, what did he say? From the from
The
the
blood.
Bloods
Yeah.
out of Walker County, because it's the Crips and the Bloods are so big out
It's
there.
such a big crime rate. Crime. The gangsters are so bad down there.
Exactly. When he said
It's
that, I was
funny
like,
trying to
the
hear.
Blood.
It's funny hearing some of his little comments.
That's what's so crazy is that when you actually sit and that's what we've done through the podcast, is sit and listen to his interviews, and just how much his story changed from the 911 calls all the way into his interviews. And tonight, once we get off and we're done here, we're gonna listen and go through the last part of that interview, from where they called him back in after the polygraph was
Yeah,
done.
that's interesting.
And it's funny that I was getting the everything ready to go to hear what the detective said in between when Marshall wasn't in the room. I'd never listened to that, because
Oh yeah,
I'd always just fast forwarded to the point of when Marshall came back in. I never thought about listening. And basically he's saying,
that's,
this guy's guilty.
yeah,
I'm not going to be surprised that when we go back in here that he doesn't ask for an attorney. And he never
hmm
did. I guess he thought
yeah,
he could
because
talk himself out of it.
it's the detective that's doing the polygraph examination talking to Ellenberg, which is the detective over the case, and they're talking
Yep.
amongst themselves. And there's even a phone call made on there and everything else. And I believe, if not mistaken, the one that gave him the polygraph test actually made the remark to Ellenberg that if this went to court, he wanted to go with, he wanted to go to court with
Yeah, I
over it.
believe
Like,
it says it. I believe he
I
says
can't
that in
remember
that
word
part.
for word, but
Yep.
I'm pretty sure it was along those lines. So yeah, I heard that. I had that cranked up with my earbuds on, and I turned it up and listened to it 100 times to make sure I heard it all right. And I was like, wow.
Yep. Tonight was actually the first night that I'd actually heard that, because I'd been, like I said, I usually just fast forwarded between the time he got up out of there to when they brought him back in, just because I didn't feel like there would be anything on it. And when I was clipping everything out
Right.
tonight, I was like, oh wow, I didn't never hear this. And that's, we'll play that for everybody. And there's big discussion about the polygraph, but I didn't realize Georgia was, that they
Yes.
had to agree that that they could use the polygraph either
Yes. And
way.
see, that was another thing that we were lied to about, because when they called us in to tell us originally that there was not going to press, they wasn't going to press any charges or anything, we asked them, well, what about the polygraph test? They told us well, it can't be used in court. Oh, I've always thought that. Okay, a polygraph is admissible in court. It can't be used. No, not in Georgia.
Yep.
Georgia law is, if you sign and agree that that polygraph test can be used against you in court, it can be used in court. And what did he do? He signed and agreed to that it could be used against him in court.
Yep.
So that was just a straight out lie to us. One of the many.
Yeah, and I know that they don't like to use them, and they probably usually won't. Especially they won't need to with this. There's so much.
Right. But I thought the biggest thing in that polygraph test was the reenactment of the shooting.
Yes.
The reenactment of the shooting was the biggest thing for me,
Well, and he
because the
said,
way he reenacted it, he reenacted it as the way he pulled it away from DJ. Boom, that gun went off. Well, the way he pulled it away from DJ, it would have went from right to left, upward.
Yep.
DJ was shot from left to right, downward.
Well, and
So
what's so
even that
funny,
reenactment.
when we were watching that on here, and some of the people that were watching it were like, "Did you see his finger?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So I rewound it, and while he's doing that reenactment, he puts his finger on the trigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's what's so crazy is, and he kept saying that it was, underneath is where the barrel was at the whole time. It was underneath, it was
Right.
underneath, it was underneath, but it couldn't have been, because
Right.
it was shot from the upwards down. And
apparently he doesn't understand that they can look at a body and tell the direction and trajectory of a gunshot.
oh yeah, no, I don't think so at all. And it's unfortunate that it ever came to that, and it was just probably just stupidity and drugs is the
Yeah.
two things that it came down to.
And jealousy. And
And jealous.
jealousy.
Yeah, I think he was afraid that they were leaving, that they were going to leave him, and he was going to be, that Brandy was going away.
Well, it's Brandy. That was Brandy. She would get back with DJ every time he'd come around, and they'd be together for a couple of weeks. They'd split up. She'd be back down there at Old Man's. Her and Mark would end up back together. It was a pattern. They were a couple of week thing. But what changed this time, the difference between this time and all the other times is just a day or two before, Mark put his hands on Brandy.
Yep.
He beat her. He beat her bad, because when
No,
she
no, he
come up
didn't.
here 2
No,
days later,
no, he didn't. She hit her
threw
head on
through the
the
window. Yeah.
through the screens, and hit her head on the toolbox and all that kind of
Right.
stuff. Couldn't imagine why him and
Cover her
DJ
own
would.
feet.
I couldn't imagine why him and DJ would have gotten a fight.
Right, but and I honestly think that that's what it was. He felt like, well, he finally put his hands on her. This time she wouldn't be back.
Yep. And I think that's actually true. I think that's exactly, I think they would have left that time, and you want to think they would have made a change.
Yeah. Well, I know DJ was wanting to. I can't say he would have, but I know
It's
I have
hard.
the messages. I have the messages the weeks leading up to this, where DJ, said he didn't want this life anymore. He wanted to get clean. He wanted to get sober. He wanted to be there for his kids. He wanted to have his family back. And I even took him to a place up here in Chattanooga a couple times. It was an outpatient. He couldn't get into any kind of inpatient, but it was an outpatient place. And he was definitely wanting to get clean and sober and get his life back on track.
But she just kept drawing him back into it.
I just say he never got the chance.
Yep. Have you heard from her at all?
I have not.
I mean, she has to know. She has to know that he was arrested. So.
Oh yeah, she has to know that. I mean, it's all over the place. It's everywhere.
Yep. And I'm sure that people that are still in contact with her or whatever have reached out as soon as it happened.
Yeah, I'm sure she has. She did have a Facebook page. She had contacted me on a couple of months ago, and I actually looked for it to see if I could find her, to send her a message to tell her, he had been arrested, but I can't find it. So I don't know if it got locked up or she deleted it or what. So.
Yeah. That's crazy. I would think that she would be the first person calling you guys to and especially with the kids.
Well, Mom adopted the kids, so she actually doesn't have any rights to them anymore. We didn't want her to be one of those convenient parents that just come around or call it every couple of hours or every couple of years. Sorry.
When she needed stuff.
Exactly. So the kids are much better off with Mom adopting them. They're loved beyond anything in this world.
Absolutely.
That's our piece of DJ still. We see DJ in them every day. The things they say, the things they do, their little facial expressions. It's 100% parts of DJ.
Yep, absolutely.
And God, we would go beyond measures for those kids to protect them.
Well, I mean, that's that it goes back to that they're your part of DJ, so
right.
You're going to do everything for them because you're doing it for him as well.
Exactly. And I looked at, and that's the way I was doing Brandy when DJ first got killed. I was angry with Brandy the first couple of months, but then I asked myself, how would DJ want me to treat her if she didn't have anything to do with this?
Yep.
And so that's how I tried to treat her. I would when she would go to jail for something she did, I would be the one that would research. I would take her phone calls. I would put money on her books. I would write her letters. I would go and visit her. For months and years, I did that. Up until the day that we had the meeting with the GBI, director of the GBI. She was supposed to go with us. And my sister drove an hour away to Chattanooga to go pick her up. She pulls in the driveway, and I've been trying to call Brandy all day. She wouldn't answer. As soon as my sister pulls in her driveway, she messages me and says that she just can't do it. That she wished we understood how hard it was on her to have to talk about that. And I went off on her.
Yeah.
I told her that she had no idea how hard something was. Yeah, she may have seen him get shot and killed, but she was only with him for 2 years. I had him in my life for 27. She had no idea how hard it was.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And I always felt like as long as she had DJ's back, I had her back. But when she did that, when the main witness would not go to the GBI director and talk to him, it went all over me because nobody gets an appointment to sit down and talk to the GBI director.
Absolutely not.
I just got lucky with that. I got very lucky with that.
Yep.
So for her to do that, that was it. I was done, and I've not had nothing to do with her since.
That blows my mind. And she's going to be part of this next stage of stuff. She's an eyewitness. And what about the other people that were around and in the house? Are they still around, or are they all disappeared?
Yeah, actually, I spoke to Fat Boy about it's been in the last 6 months.
Okay.
I seen him on Facebook, and I seen him a message. I found him on Facebook, and I sent him a message. And he actually looks really good.
Good.
I don't know if he's married or if he's just dating this girl, but they both look good. He looks really healthy and everything now. He looks like he's turned his life around.
Good. It sometimes it takes something for like this to see something like this for people to realize
Snap out of it and get a hold of themselves.
Well, it could be them. That's the whole thing, is that there's just one day away, one time with the drugs that they could be the person sitting in the chair and that happened to.
Exactly. So I sent him a message, and I told him, I said, I think I said something about, I just asked him I found out his sister had died. That's what it was. I found out his sister had passed away. She had a bad heart. So I reached out to him and told him my condolences about his sister, because, hey, I know how it feels to lose a sibling.
Yep.
So I wanted to give him my condolences. And when I pulled him up and found him, I noticed how good he looked in his pictures and everything. And I told him, I was like, you look really good. I said, I'm glad you're doing good.
Yep, that's awesome.
He asked me how I was doing, and then it was just a real short conversation. But yeah, they're all still, he's still around, and Brandy's still around somewhere. Last I heard, she was living in Alabama here somewhere. Okay.
But yeah, that's going to be a key to that, all of that stuff. So I just hope that's the biggest thing, is that that's going to be just as hard on you guys when that time comes, because you're going to have to hear everything, and everything's going to be put forward, and that you just got to make sure to protect yourself.
It won't be so much. It's going to be hard on me. Yeah. I'll give you that, but it won't be as hard on me as it will be the rest of the family, because I pretty much know all this stuff already from digging so deep into this police report, the crime, the whole investigation. I've kept all this from my family. They don't know all these little details, and nobody should ever have to go through this.
No, absolutely not.
But I probably know this case better than the investigators that handled it.
Oh, I guarantee you do.
Well, there was a couple of things that I pinpointed throughout the investigation that even Eric missed, and he's a private investigator. He's a damn good private investigator.
Yep.
And I would see something, and I'd send it to him and be like, "Did you notice this?" And he was like, "No, I completely missed that."
Yep.
So Yeah, I mean, I probably do know this case better than they do.
Well, and that's, they're just going to need to bring their A game when it goes to court, because,
Hmm.
there'll be a few challenges just because of the time frame and the initial ruling. That stuff will be, it'll be a challenge, but as long as they bring the evidence that's here, there shouldn't be anything
And I have no doubt in my mind that the new DA, Mr. Fuller, will do that, because from day one, since he was handed this case when he was the assistant DA and was over the cold case unit, he has done everything he said he would do. He has stayed in contact. He's kept me updated. He's been amazing, and I
That's
think
awesome.
he's going to do really good in the position of DA. I
Good.
really do.
And that's what has to have. It has to be credible people that aren't in it just, the old, you know, good old boy type systems
Yes.
that's been so bad in a lot of the Georgia counties, between the coroners, the DAs, you know, even to the defense attorneys and things like that. So you have to have reputable people doing that stuff.
Yes. And it's just, I've said all along that I believe there should be term limits for elected positions, sheriffs, coroners, judges. I believe there should be term limits for all these people. Having a sheriff for almost 30 years, that's ridiculous, because after so many years, the further and further it goes, they just get dirty and corrupt.
Yep. Even
And
if they don't mean to, even if they don't mean to,
yeah,
they end up just and it just falling into some of that categories of looking overlooking things for other reasons and things like that. So
and maybe it's just getting lazy. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not as much
com-
as being dirty and corrupt. It's just getting lazy.
they get comfortable. Yep. And
Yeah.
then, and just, the environment of the world today, that's so anti-police as it is, it makes it hard enough. And then you've got people that, says the stuff like he did. Well, it's going to be harder to do it now. It makes it more convoluted. What kind of mess is that?
Right. So, but I appreciate you covering this case. I appreciate you starting this podcast for other victims and their families. You're doing
Absolutely.
a great job. You're doing an amazing job.
Thank you very much. And, that's the main thing is when we hit this point last week, I was like, okay, so what do I do? And I talked to some people and they're like, tell the story. Everybody needs to know. Everybody needs to be able to come into this from the very
Yeah.
beginning in 3 years and um and say, okay, I know this story from front to end. And that was my whole purpose of this anyway, because I wanted to make sure that his whole story got out there, because I don't feel like, there was some good podcast on it, but I still don't
Right.
feel like everybody heard everything. And that's what I wanted to do is give her.
I didn't release everything. I released everything to you,
I
but
appreciate
I
that.
held back a lot on all the other podcasts.
I appreciate that. It's made it a lot easier because of being able to have all that information. And when I tell people this guy's guilty, then I'm able to show, you know,
Right.
why he's
You have the
guilty.
proof.
It's
Right.
easy.
Well, you're doing a good job, amazing job, and I know you'll have a lot more podcasts to come from this.
I think so. So,
So,
we've had
sadly, I
people.
mean, I hate that you have to cover all these cases, but
It's
you're doing it for the
unfortunate.
right reasons.
It's
Right.
unfortunate, but I want to be there for people, and I want to be able to get the story out, and just to put pressure and people, and as well as anybody that getting people to talk about it is the most important thing. The more people
Getting
you can get
people
to
to
talk about it.
listen.
Yep.
Exactly. Getting them to listen originally. Like getting on a podcast is a huge deal. It might not sound like much to any ordinary person, but when you're fighting an injustice, getting on any media or on a podcast or anything is huge.
Yep.
Because, like me and you said before, even if one person hears it that hasn't heard it before, that one person can share it to 10 people. Those 10 people will share it to 20 people. And that, by the end of the year, 200 people knows this story just by that one podcast.
Yep. And that's the goal.
Right. And you're
Well,
doing amazing work, and I will definitely be sending you some more families.
thank you. And that, yeah, because I've got probably, I'm going to go through, basically where you brought Eric in. That's where I'm going to start at next week and kind of go through everything that he did and, show that in the next week's episode. And then probably one or two more episodes kind of tie everything up. And I'm going to be around for all the court stuff as best as I can be and be a part of that and, get that out there so we can get it. I really want to start to finish, for DJ, so that at some point in time somebody wants to sit down and listen to his whole story, they'll be able to hear the whole thing from start to finish. So
Right. And that's another thing about all these podcasts and all the media coverage and everything. This is a learning tool for a lot of people because when I first started doing this, I started researching trying to find cases that were similar to DJ's. I couldn't find any. Like, yeah, there's tons of suicides out there, and there's tons of suicides that were actually murders.
Yep.
But I couldn't find any coverage on any article. I found one, and a lot of people know the Christian Archuleta case, and
Yep.
I've been following him since I started fighting for DJ, and it was like the identical story. Like it was the same story, just different players.
Yep.
And so, if nothing else, if anybody else ever goes through this, God forbid, at least they can pull up DJ's story and learn from it. If nothing else.
The biggest thing I found is that with a lot there, you've got so much information in all the reports and everything like that. In some of these other cases, it's a 1-page police report and not even really an autopsy.
Or they don't have nothing at all.
Yep. No witness information, nobody talking about it. There's no information. And once you get, you could imagine if it was 5 years past trying to go off of just a, half a page police report and a shoddy autopsy that just says suicide on it. There's really nothing you can, it's hard. And to get people to talk about it is almost impossible.
Right. And I mean, the only other thing you could do on a case like that would be exhume the body.
Yep.
And if it's been 5 years, I don't even know if there would be any evidence left of a body to get.
Not enough without, depending on exactly what happened and everything like
injury. That. Yeah. So I just, if nothing else, I hope that people will, because I can't imagine how many families have been told their loved one committed suicide and they just went with it because they didn't know any better. They automatically assume, okay, yeah, they killed themselves. I can't imagine how many families are out there, or the ones that have been told their loved one killed themselves and didn't have the money or the means to fight the system.
Yep.
Which I didn't have the money. I didn't have the money to fight the system. I just did it. I tell everybody all the time. Luckily, I had nothing but time on my hands. I have a boring life. So that was the only thing that I guess kept me going is because I have a boring life. I was able to put the time into it and the effort and everything. But if nothing else, that would be my message to everybody. To anybody that had a loved one kill themselves, question it.
Yep.
Don't automatically take it for what it is. If you believe your loved one killed themselves, I get it. If you don't want to go through this process, I get it. But if you believe that there's suspicion to it, question it.
Yeah, that's the most important thing is that, fight for what you believe and make them prove you wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jen, thank you, Jen, and thank you, Andre.
I hear your doggies out there.
Yes, they're really loud. I didn't know they were going to be that loud. They're usually really good.
Hey, you're fine. I have a dog and a kid and a husband, so I'm surprised you haven't heard one of those three yet.
That's funny. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. I'm thankful for everything that you've, I'm glad that you've finally gotten justice, or in the first stage of justice, I'll say.
Yes.
And hopefully you guys are able to start that grieving process and start moving forward with your life, and not have to wake up to check your email for different reasons, as opposed to
Right.
seeing what the next status update is. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you soon. We'll talk to you soon.
Of course.
And if you need anything from me, or if I do something wrong, yell at me, please.
I will.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Robert. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Guys, thank y'all for joining. We appreciate it very much. We will, continue this next week and have, more to go on. And we'll continue following through with the videos from last week and this week. And, just continue to tell GJ's story. And if you're on, please, make sure to like us and follow us on all our social medias. Give us a thumbs up on this and subscribe so you can know when videos are coming. And, as we get more cases coming through, we want to continue to do this and, fight for justice for other families as well. So thank y'all for joining tonight. We appreciate it. And y'all have a great night.